Hello, wonderful people, and welcome back to Coffee Over Apples. My name's Steph, and if I try to tell you about all the shenanigans that go on in this channel, we'll be here till tomorrow. So, this video is going to be the 10 best books that I read last year in 2020.
It could change the world.
Let me start off by saying that 2020, I read way over 100 books. I read almost 120 books. And I started off the year with a goal of like 30, and then I bumped it up to 50, and then I bumped it up to 100, and I went way over 100, so I'm super proud of myself because I've never read that many books in a year before. Also, before last year, I wasn't on BookTube, so kind of comes with the territory. But these are the 10 best books that I read in 2020. So I also need to say that I am not including manga on this list because I only read a handful of series last year. And if you've been following me, you know that the winner of every category would have been Neon Genesis Evangelion. So I'm not going to include manga because we already know that this is an Evangelion stan account. So, book number 10. Coming in at number 10, this was sent to me by the author. It's going to be Monster by Duncan Swan. I really adored this book. I had so much fun with it. It is a sci-fi horror that I just absolutely adored. I mean, first of all, the sprayed edges, black sprayed edges, gorgeous, right? But the monsters in here really scared me. And that's the part that really sold me, was how scary the world is in this, in which there is a giant cloud that is covering the earth in darkness, and things are falling apart. So our characters are trying to run away from this cloud or trying to fight the things that are coming out of the cloud, and the monsters in here, I wouldn't stand a chance. So because of that, how much I realized I would not make it in this world, I think it deserves a little bit more hype. There's a couple things in here that some people might have problems with, but it was messed up on every level that I wanted it to be. So, thanks so much, Duncan, for sending this to me, and it actually made number 10 on my top 10 of 2020. Coming in at number 9 is Educated by Tara Westover. I read this as an audiobook earlier in the year, and this is a memoir, one of the best memoirs I've ever read. It was so good, and it's so extreme. It's the story of this girl, basically of the author, and how she grew up in an occultish family that didn't believe in modern education, and she grew up on a farm, and the family just had no education, and so she was the first one of her family to leave the farm looking for education. And her story, what she went through and what it's like getting an education and then coming back to the farm, and her family kind of outcasting her, but she realizing how many things they're doing wrong and dangerously, was just, this story is phenomenal. You cannot make this stuff up. So I suggest, if you're looking for a really interesting, hard-hitting memoir, check this one out. Coming in at number 8, this is going to be Miracle Creek by Angie Kim. I read this also earlier in 2020, and it is a mystery thriller. We're trying to figure out who done it. It was a tragic accident that happened at a rehabilitation facility. So the facility in its core is also at question because ethically it's a facility which provides higher oxygen intake to children who have things such as autism or other disabilities. There was a horrible accident. The accident at the facility went horribly wrong. There's a giant explosion. It happens in the very beginning of the book, but we don't know who caused it. So it's taking place mostly in the courtroom, following the courtroom drama of the different families, some of them on one side saying that they were doing this rehabilitation oxygen tank lab experiment because they thought it would cure their child's mental disability, and parents on the other side fighting and saying that there's nothing wrong with autism, and so experiments like this actually do more harm than good. So it was very interesting discussion, and we're following the family who was in charge of this. There's an immigration story. There's just so many hard-hitting contemporary issues revolving around this story. And wow, it was really, really well done. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. So I'm interested in reading more by Angie Kim in the future. Number 7 is going to The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. I read this in October for the Interstellar Book Club, which is the sci-fi book club that I run with a couple co-hosts, and this book was so much fun. You can see all of the different tabs that I have in here, but it was like space travel, multiple dimensions, doppelgangers, sapphic romance. It was great. It was a thriller. There was just enough gore to keep me enticed because you know I love a gory horror. It was so good. And we have a full discussion for it on my channel because we did the live stream that month on my channel. So I've heard a lot of other people saying that this is also one of their favorite books of 2020, and rightfully so. It was really well done. The world building was fantastic. I did not have any qualms with it, but it was just a really good time, and it wasn't that long. I want to say it was a little under 300 pages, so it was just the right size. All of my questions were mostly answered, and yeah, I didn't find any plot holes, so fantastic job. Number 6 is going to a more recent read, and that is Salem's Lot. I read this as a buddy read with Aileen from Pygmy Puffs Reads, and I had so much fun with this. This opened up a door for a whole vampire binge that I'm currently on, where I just want to absorb all the vampire goodness. Not tacky vampires, even though I do love a good bad boy. But man, this was so much fun. I can tell from reading this that this was Stephen King in his prime. I mean, it was one of the very first books that he ever wrote, and it's just, if you've seen what he's been writing lately and you miss the old Stephen King and you haven't read this, you got to. It was so good. There's like 2 or 3 scenes in this book that are seared into my mind. Like, they were so messed up and so gory, and I can't unsee it. My imagination just took it too far, and so this book kind of scarred me, which is fantastic. I gave it 5 stars, absolutely loved it. So if you're looking for a really good classic vampire horror and you want to get into some Stephen King, start here. This is a good place to start. Number 5 is going to go to The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I read this earlier in the year as part of my vlog that I did for the Queer Lit Readathon, in which I read 3 LGBTQIA+ books, and it was my first time actually reading books with a non-cisgender romance at its core. So I read one with a male-male romance as a focus, one with a female-female romance, and then another one with bi representation. So I ended up reading The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo for the sapphic romance. It was perfection. I love this book. I stand by this book. Some people don't like it, other people do love it. I don't care. I still love it. It was so good. I cried my eyes out in that vlog, so if you'd like to see me cry, that was back in the beginning of the year when I started BookTube, so please feel free to go check that out. But it hit me in all the feels because I so understand why she did what she did. She's actually not a great person, but I get it. I get it. The social commentary on being a Latin American in the 1950s and 60s, being part of the LGBTQ community in the 50s and 60s, trying to live up to societal expectations, being a woman. It was just, so good. Yes, I need more of that. And I haven't read any more Taylor Jenkins Reid since then because I'm kind of scared to be disappointed. But you know what? That's gonna have to change because it was fantastic. I don't have my copy right now because I lent it out as soon as I got it, and I'm realizing that I need to stop lending out books because I never get them back. Number 4 is going to A Storm of Swords. This is the 3rd book in the Song of Ice and Fire series. I am currently reading book 4 and loving it. I absolutely adore this series. Oh my goodness. It does have its problems, but I'm okay with that because the people who say really dumb things, chances are they're gonna get eaten by a dragon. So, works for me. I love this book. There were so many major moments from the TV series in this book. I did watch the TV series and adored it. So if you watch the TV series, the red wedding and the purple wedding both happen in this book. You know what I'm talking about. It's so good. This was also one of the very first single book reviews that I did on my channel, so I did do a bookmark for this, and it's actually one of my favorite bookmarks that I've made to date. So yeah, totally deserves it. Favorite so far in the series. I'm not done with number 4 yet, so I don't know if number 4 will take the place of favorite in the series, but I'll let you know once I'm done with it, because right now this is holding that spot. Number 3 has to go To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. I absolutely adored this book so much. It gave me so much hope in humanity, and I love it. It just put the biggest smile on my face. This was one of the December picks for the Interstellar Book Club, sci-fi book club that I host, and man, this book was perfect. I love first contact with aliens. That is my favorite trope of all time. And this book gave me that. Plus so much more, so much happiness. The level of care that the characters in this book had was just so heartwarming. There's no villain, there's no good guy. It's just people trying to do right. And that was so refreshing. Like, I've never read anything like this, and I'm super excited to start the Wayfarer series read along in January for our book club. So, man, like, this set the bar really high. If you haven't read it, it is a novella, so it's fairly short. I mean, even for a novella, look how many little tabbies I put for a novella. Like, that says a lot. I loved it. It was great. Spot number 2 is going to go to Just Mercy. Oh, this was such a hard decision to make because spots 1, 2, and 3, I was going back and forth for so long, like which one is gonna go where, and I have to say, Just Mercy was really close to being number 1. And what made this book so fantastic was not just that I cried like 5 times while I was listening to the audiobook, but the amount of important conversation that came out of this book. Everyone that I spoke to who read it absolutely loved it. The movie adaptation does not fully cover all of the cases that are in the book, but that is okay. You need to read this book. I feel like everyone and their mom needs to read this book. It was so important. This conversation on racism and injustice within the American justice system, which you would think, after how many hundreds of years, would slowly start to get itself together. But unfortunately it doesn't, and there's so many people who fall through the cracks and are victims who shouldn't be victims, and it's just like, oh, the cycle, oh, it's incredible. Like, a reread is happening in 2021 because it was so good. It was so good. I can't gush about this book enough. I feel like anyone who's come to me with their opinions about how great the justice system is, I'm like, have you read Just Mercy? Have you read it? No, you probably haven't. Go read it. It's so good. And then spot number 1. I've gushed about this book quite a few times on my channel, and it has opened up my world to gothic horror. It's going to The Monk. Thank you so much, Vicky, for making me read this book, because I did not know that it would become a new all-time favorite. I don't know if you can tell the amount of tabs that I have here, but I just absolutely adored this book. I cannot think of anyone to recommend this book to. I can't think of anyone and say, oh, you know what, they would really like The Monk. No, I don't know who I would recommend this book to, because it is one of the darkest things that I've ever read. When I didn't think that the author was gonna go that dark, they went there. And I loved it. It was horrible. Also more images in here that I can't unsee in my imagination, which makes it absolutely fantastic. I love when a book can traumatize me. We've already established that I'm a masochist, but this was impeccable. I've never read a gothic horror before. The fall from grace trope, absolutely fantastic. So we're following this monk named Ambrosio, and he has never left the monastery. He's very popular within the town that he lives in because everyone comes to his sermons. But he's never left since he was brought there as a child, so he's never tasted temptation, but he speaks about it all the time. So lo and behold, something happens which allows him to then speak from experience. So it is such a fun time. Also, definitely need to do a reread. I watched the movie. Movie was alright. Movie didn't cover everything. This is where it's at. Alright, you guys, those are my top 10 books of 2020. Please let me know if you read any of these books or if you plan on reading any of these, and if you would like someone to buddy read them with, let me know if I can fit it in my schedule. I love doing buddy reads. Alright guys, I post videos every Wednesday and Saturday. I'll catch you next time. Bye!
What's it making, Mr. Wonka? Mr. Wonka?